Remember that one time you experienced over a decade of severe health challenges and over 100 doctors across multiple states had absolutely no clue what was happening or how to help. So you invested several years in teaching yourself neuroscience while healing yourself from 22 years of intensive traumatic stress. No, not really. Actually, I'm recovering from some pretty severe amnesia, and that's not really ringing much of a bell right now. I can't say I remember much of any of that explicitly. This is awkward.
What did you learn during your case studies, or what were some conclusions that they led to?
Yeah, so my research led to several new discoveries, and it was a combination of learning about neuroscience, studying my experiences, and slowly drawing some new connections. And so the conclusions I came to were not things I directly learned from other sources. They were new things that I kind of figured out by piecing together my experience in relation to what I was learning from neuroscience. So my seventh thesis statement or conclusion or discovery along this healing journey is that adverse childhood experiences or early life traumatic stress can disrupt attachment development. When this happens, social engagement and disengagement roles develop independently of one another. So what happens is you have this abstract brain-body blueprint, and it undergoes this process of being sculpted into specific brain-body wiring through which we personally encounter ourselves and our understanding of the world and life and reality. And there's these different social engagement and different disengagement roles, and each one has implicit neural wiring of unconscious memories stored in relation to attachment well-being, and that information affects brain-body modalities of operation, engagement, and regulation. And so what happens is adverse childhood experiences or traumatic stress experienced during early life create implicit wiring based on unfulfilled attachment needs, and then these different social engagement and or disengagement roles develop independently of one another. And so you might have the parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child here, parent-child bonding from the perspective of the caregiver here, mutual support and cooperation here, casual friendships here, emotional intimacy here, physical intimacy here, emotional health here, physical health here. And these different social engagement roles don't instinctively know how to communicate within the neural wiring that's creating an automated sense of self and understanding, instinctive understanding of life experience. And then there's social and disengagement roles, and they can hold different types of traumatic memories and bodily responses, and that information doesn't have connection with these various social engagement roles. And so all of these different roles within the neurobiological structures develop independently of one another. Neural wiring related with each of these roles does not have an instinctive ability to communicate and collaborate within the unconscious body-mind. So instead of a sense of self having access to all this neural data, this part of the sense of self has access to this neural data, this sense of self has access to this neural data, and so on. And what happens is different aspects of the self become engaged by different styles of stimulus. And so the self might feel like one person around family and might feel like a different person around friends, or might feel like one person around these types of friends and a different type of person around these kinds of people, or might feel like a different sense of self when alone versus the sense of self when socially engaging. And it's because of how the stimulus of other people activates these different social engagement and disengagement roles that engage neural data as implicit memories provide navigation regarding self and life according to attachment need fulfillment, and the activation and ignition of this neural data affects how the brain and the body know how to regulate and share energies within itself through all the various, compartments and components of this miraculous vessel we inhabit. And this creates unique order of neural wiring. These are frequently mistaken for disorders, but the truth is that there is nothing disordered about this. This is the most miraculous order that could possibly exist within neurobiological applications of consciousness. It is literally the most profound and astounding miracle. There's unique order of neural wiring. It's extraordinarily organized. Extraordinarily organized. Different vibrational signals, different stimulus, especially from different types of people, activate specific regions of neural wiring that engage these various social engagement and disengagement roles for optimal survival. It's a very miraculous evolutionary adaptation of the social engagement system that neurobiological wiring is developed on top of. And so it stems from attachment development, but it really relates to the entire organization of the brain-body system, from implicit neural wiring to the way that the heart beats and regulates blood flow. And so it's really, really miraculous. It's unique order of neural wiring. Unique order. It's a unique order. It's not a disorder, it's a unique order. This explains a variety of diagnoses, from borderline personality disorder to dissociative identity disorder. These current descriptors, however, do not effectively explain the neuroscience of the experiences or provide specified directionality towards healing potentials, which is exactly what a clinical diagnosis is intended to do. Plus, it seems a little off to put the words personality and identity in the same phrase as disorder. No one is allowed to label another human being as having a disordered identity or a disordered personality. Every sense of self is unconditionally valid. Every human being is beautifully unique. A miracle in a million ways. Unique order of neural wiring does not affect identity or worth. And this truth is worthy of global recognition. The truth is that the majority of people on the planet experience some level of unique neural wiring. Adverse experiences and traumatic events, especially during early childhood, are very, very common. And honestly, any moment of disrupted attachment need fulfillment can create some form of unique neural wiring within this organization of the social engagement system. So even like one moment when you're 4 years old and you get lost in the store and you don't feel safe, that moment disrupts attachment development for an instant, and then this little portion of neural wiring doesn't achieve connectivity and continues operating independently of other data. And so it definitely ranges along a spectrum, but the truth is that the majority of people in the world experience some form of unique neural wiring within the social engagement system because of minor and or severe and occasional and or frequent or chronic attachment need fulfillment disruption that affects how neural wiring is organized within the social engagement system. To understand how unique order of neural wiring affects experiences of self and life, we need to understand where our experiences of self and life come from. And so while we're moving through our moments, the manner in which we instinctively understand who we are and the manner in which we instinctively understand the world around us and the interaction between ourselves and the world around us completely comes from the wiring of our brain-body system. If vibrational signals suddenly activate a different region of neural wiring holding different styles of information, then the experience of self and life will suddenly switch to a different area of energy than it previously was in. Neural wiring affiliated with distinct social engagement and disengagement roles is going to provide different styles of information regarding identity and experience. Let's look at an example. If someone says to someone else, "I don't like your attitude. Go to your room until I come and give you permission to come out." Who is most likely to be saying that to whom? Is it most likely a romantic partner to their lover? Is it most likely a best friend to their peer? Is it most likely a child to their parent? No, it's most likely going to be a parent saying that to a child or a caregiver saying it to a young person in their care. And so different styles of neural connectivity and data within this wiring related with these social engagement and disengagement roles will provide unique styles of navigation. And so the way that we understand this relationship with our being and how this relates to the world comes from the activation of this neural wiring. And this is why a lot of people might feel like a different sense of self around their family versus other people, because the social engagement role of parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child is being activated by the stimulus of engaging with their family, and all these other regions of neural wiring that relate with their adult self are less engaged. And so their instinctive unconscious sense of self, unconscious interpretations of the moment more so stem from neural wiring from early childhood related with the parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child than they have to do with more updated neural data. And especially if there was any pain that happened to create independent development of these engagement and disengagement roles, then there might be even more of an isolated experience or an independent experience over here as this neural wiring becomes activated. So another great example is unconscious sensations of superiority and inferiority. As a child, you literally look up to people. You are physically looking up to adults. They're bigger. They're a larger body. Their brain can process through complex concepts more effectively. There's this sense of they are superior, they are bigger than me, I am inferior, I am smaller than them. And it's a very unconscious sensation. And similarly, this may happen as an adult when connecting with a child. You are physically taller. You literally have to look down to them. It's not like you're looking down on them. You're physically, literally looking down at them because they're smaller. And so there may be an unconscious sensation of superiority. Even with complete respect for the child and everything, there's an unconscious sensation of, I am bigger. I have more power in this situation. It's a very unconscious sensation. And so when these roles within a social engagement system develop and operate independently of one another, activation of parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child may unconsciously ignite sensations of feeling inferior or feeling small. And it's very, 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 very unconscious. You don't consciously go around like, oh my goodness, the world is a giant place and I'm a teeny child. But those sensations are unconsciously projected into experience, and it comes through very subtly in somatic sensations or backdrop emotions without an explicit explanation. It comes through in all kinds of things, and the conscious mind doesn't know it, but secretly it's because neural wiring affiliated with the parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child is independently being activated and creating uniquely individualized sensations of self and automated interpretations of the surrounding world. And those projections are creating reality from within, and it's all in relation to the perspective of a child, where the child unconsciously feels inferior because of how big everything is. And similarly, if the parent-child bonding from the perspective of the parent is independently being activated, there may be unconscious feelings of superiority. And this could manifest in like feeling the need to take care of everybody. Like it might not be like a superior thing. It might just be like, oh my goodness, like I'm a tall person and I have to take care of everybody because they're physically smaller. And it's not going to come through in that conscious narrative. That is not going to be an explicit dialogue. It comes through in sensations. So when you connect with someone, there's almost like a motherly type instinct or a caregiver type instinct. And you're like, I need to take care of this person. And it comes through in a variety of different thoughts and feelings. But in the backdrop of the unconsciousness, it's deriving from the implicit wiring within the social engagement system in relation to parent-child bonding from the perspective of the parent. Oftentimes, this is an imprint of a caregiver that was experienced during early childhood. And so if you're a child, you have this caregiver, then information gathered about this person and their manner of interacting with themselves and the world becomes imprinted into this neurobiological information and begins to create this role of parent-child bonding from the perspective of the parent, even though that has not happened yet. Like even as a child, that social engagement role exists within the neurobiological wiring. And it's basically an imprint of the caregiver. And so the body of the child is here interacting with the caregiver, and from those experiences, energies formulate this neural data, and then there's parent-child bonding from the perspective of the parent. That's an imprint of this caregiver. And then there's parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child. That's the first-hand personal experiences during these interactions. And so this early neurodevelopment sculpts the neural wiring in relation to attachment needs affecting brain-body operations. And as they exist and operate independently of one another, moments where the role of parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child may project feelings of being small or being inferior or being just like insecure, just things that you might feel in childhood. And because that neural wiring doesn't have connectivity with all of this other data where the body itself is like, I know I'm an adult and I can do this. If it doesn't have connectivity with that, then these projections are going to be like, oh my God, I'm a small, teeny, tiny child and the world is a terrifying, huge place. And I'm just like helplessly small. But it comes through in very abstract sensations. So you don't know that it's happening. You don't know why these feelings are coming up. And then you might even feel a little silly. Like, well, I know I'm a grown adult. I know I can do this. Why am I feeling so small and inferior and insecure right now? And it's because of the way that this neural data is activating implicit memories, providing navigation regarding self and life according to attachment well-being, but all these roles are operating independently of one another within the neurobiological organization of the social engagement system. When the neurobiological role of parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child activates independently of other roles within this neurobiological social engagement system, two distinct features unfold. The first is that implicit neural wiring, navigating identity and experience, shift towards neural data gathered from early childhood. And then that information is being unconsciously projected into reality and interpreting unfolding moments. The second occurrence is that brain-body activity may shift to early stages of neurodevelopment. That might decrease left brain activity and amplify right brain activity as one of many examples. And this can cause an infinite myriad of unique styles of personal experience. For example, solidification of self might unconsciously decrease, and the sense of self might blend with the sense of selves of other people in the surrounding area. It has to do with the way neural activity is affecting automated translations of reality. These roles within the social engagement system then continue existing, operating, and expanding independently of one another. Imagine each year adding neural wiring to the social engagement system, contributing to the development of all these different roles. If attachment well-being is continually disrupted during these continuing years, then each year creates a new layer of neural wiring for each role. And then there may be dozens or hundreds of roles within the social engagement system in relation to neural wiring, as memory data is filed in accordance with attachment well-being and then connects with various styles of brain-body operations, regulation, integrative patterns, etc. Then you may have hundreds or thousands of roles, just depending on the severity of disrupted attachment development or attachment well-being. And this can happen in a couple different ways. There may be chronic traumatic events, there may be persistent experiences that disrupt attachment well-being, or there could be chronic traumatic stress activation. So even if there's one traumatic event during early childhood, then the social engagement system may chronically be interrupted in its development as roles develop and operate independently of one another if trauma responses from that one event are chronically activated. So even if there's one event in early childhood, the activation of that traumatic response then disrupts each year as experience adds to neural wiring, and the social engagement continues to exist, operate, and expand through independent roles. And then there could be dozens of different roles that don't instinctively have neural connectivity with one another. In addition to originally developing independently, the persistent operation and activity of these roles independently expand the independence of social engagement and disengagement roles. So basically, if this role is being activated and it doesn't have connectivity with all this other neural data, then new neural data from the moments unfolding where this is independently being activated and contributing to immediacy of life experience, new neural data is filed in accordance with this role in the social engagement system, and all these other roles then do not have access to that new neural data. So this role here is independently operating. My sense of self, my processing of life experience is coming from this one role. And then there's all this other neural wiring throughout my social engagement system, right? But I don't have instinctive unconscious access to that. Then new moments are going to be filed over here with this role, and these portions of neural wiring, creating uniquely individualized sensations of self and processing of life, are not going to have access to this new neural data. When the roles within the social engagement system continue developing and expanding independently of one another, there may develop a variety of health challenges. One example is amnesia. If I'm here and I can access this neural data, then I don't have access to any of this neural data, and I forget about these portions of my life and these sensations and these autobiographical pieces of information. I don't have access to these elements of regulatory protocols, etc. And my immediacy of self is coming exclusively from this neural data, but it's all happening unconsciously. So consciously, I don't have awareness of this activity, and it can create a variety of health challenges. Amnesia just being one of many, many examples. When living with this unique neural wiring of the social engagement system, there's a bunch of different things that could happen. There's an infinite amount of potential experiences, but I want to address two in particular. One, what happens when a bunch of different roles are being activated simultaneously? And then the second one is what happens when things switch from this role to this role without neural connectivity. So the first one, what happens when all these different roles within the social engagement system are being simultaneously activated? Okay, so you've got this complex neural structure, hundreds of trillions of neural networks in the brain, and a bunch more throughout the body. And within the organization of this neural wiring, you've got the social engagement system with all these different roles. And every year of life has added neural data to this complex structure of the brain-body system that provides our sensations of identity and understandings of life to create personal experience, okay? So when there's activation of a bunch of different roles simultaneously, then you have multiple inner realities being simultaneously generated and projected. And it can create so many unique experiences of consciousness. There may feel like there's 10 different people inside of your head all talking at once. There may be psychosis-styled experiences where you're seeing and hearing things that do not immediately exist as implicit neural data projects information from past moments into the immediate reality, but consciousness can't automatically distinguish that. I'm not going to look at this and be like, okay, I see a picture frame on the wall that I logically know is not there. Clearly, this is a projection from a past memory. Like, that process doesn't come up. But that's what can happen in this experience. And so when there's activation of a bunch of different social engagement roles, okay, so you might have activation of a fight stress response, you might have activation of a flight stress response, you might have activation of physical intimacy, you might have all these different activations of roles within the social engagement system, but each one is pulling its data from a various region of neural wiring that doesn't have connection with any of these other roles. And so then this neural wiring is creating this sense of reality, and this neural wiring is creating this sense of reality, and this neural wiring is creating this sense of reality. And you're here as consciousness like, oh my God, these like all these different realities simultaneously occurring, and I don't know which one's me, and I don't know which one's real, and I don't know what's what, and this is really terrifying and overwhelming. And this can create so many different kinds of unique experiences. It may be difficult to be in the physical present moment because there's so much noise going on. The noise is coming from memories, because memories don't exist to store the past. Memories are not like, this is what happened then. Neural wiring of memories is like, this is how I understand what's happening right now, and this is how I understand the potentials of what might next occur. And so you have all of this noise inside because these different portions of neural wiring don't have connection with one another. Disrupted attachment development caused these different roles within the social engagement system to develop independently and operate independently of one another. So then now this portion of neural wiring is saying this is what reality is. And then this portion of neural wiring is saying, no, I don't know what you're thinking over there, but this is what reality is because I have access to this neural data. And then this one over here is like, you guys are both nuts. This is what reality is. Like, come on, get your stuff together. Like, clearly, this is what reality is. And it's because these different regions of neural wiring are providing different types of unconscious navigation. For example, how do I know that this is a hand? If I didn't have memory data, I would not instinctively know that this is a hand. And I'd be like, oh my God, what is this thing? But because I have memory data, I say, this is a hand, this is my hand, and I can move my hand, and it's helpful to pick up a cup and drink water out of. I have an instinctive understanding of what this thing is because of my neural wiring, because of memories. And so we understand all the different factors of our reality, our internal sense of self and our external sensation of reality, based on how vibrational signals are being translated through our neural data and generating and projecting sensations regarding identity and experience. And so this portion of neural wiring, without connection to any others, will create its own uniquely individualized sense of self and understanding of life experience. And if you have dozens or maybe even hundreds of roles within the social engagement system that are operating independently of one another, but being simultaneously activated, there's going to be a whole bunch of different understandings of reality simultaneously occurring, multiple inner realities simultaneously being projected. And this can feel like racing thoughts, intrusive thoughts, different kinds of dissociation, mind-body disconnectivity. It can feel like there's 20 different people living inside of your head and you don't know which one's you. It can create all kinds of unique experiences, but it stems from this unique neural wiring of the social engagement system because of disrupted attachment development. The other fascinating thing that can happen with this is what happens then when roles within the social engagement system shift or switch from this role to this role. So you got this organization of neural wiring connected with these memories, and it has this sense of self, and it has these kinds of sensations, and it has this understanding of life, and it's affiliated with this style of brain-body activity and different regulatory patterns and protocols. But then you've got this like totally different other region over here, and it has a completely different kind of sense of self, connected with completely different memory data, connected with totally separate, distinct, unique styles of brain-body activity and operations. Okay, so life is coming from here, but then a vibrational signal comes in and activates this neural data that doesn't connect with what's over here. Then you get dissociative shifts or switches of consciousness. And it can feel like a train being lifted from its tracks and moved over here to another track. There's like this jolt of reality. And it might be sudden or it might be prolonged, just depending on vibrational signals from the outside world and styles of neural wiring in the inside world. A shift or a switch can be in nanoseconds or it can take hours, just depending on these variables. And so when it jumps from here to here, in a dissociative shift, then it redirects neural wiring, providing interpretations of self and life. And this can feel very disorienting or anxiety provoking. When there's a dissociative switch of consciousness, then it's not just adjusting the neural data of memories, it's adjusting styles of brain-body operation. And you could switch from engagement of one end of the autonomic nervous system to the way far other end. And then everything from blood flow and oxygen flow and muscular engagement and processing of sensory data, all of it changes. And again, it can happen in nanoseconds or it can take many, many hours, but a dissociative shift changes the neural wiring, adjustment of the neural wiring activation that's creating sensations of self and life. And so it creates a change in the unconscious mind. But then a dissociative switch adjusts the neural wiring engagement and engagement of brain-body regulatory patterns and protocols. And in addition to like anxiety and disorientation and stuff, a switch can actually be physically painful. There might be pains behind the ears or different headaches or different muscle tension patterns. There could be a bunch of different physical things that cause discomfort or actual pain when a dissociative switch occurs. And it's because vibrational signals are suddenly changing the activity of neural data in all these different regions that don't have connection with one another. And so there's all of this neural wiring over here, but then a vibrational signal is like, that's not getting processed here. I need to go activate this data to effectively process this new vibrational signal. And then this disengages and this engages, and the whole brain and body are like, oh my God, I'm another person. And everything that makes you a person, your sense of self, your understanding of who you are, your understanding of the world, your understanding of who you are in relation to orientation and time and space, the way that circulation is flowing, respiration is flowing, digestion is flowing, blood's flowing, oxygen's flowing, muscles are engaging, facial features are naturally occurring, vocal vibrations are naturally and instinctively enunciating themselves. Everything that makes a person changes because the neurobiological activity is radically adjusting within the neural wiring of the social engagement system. Shifts or switches of consciousness occur when various styles of vibrational signals or pieces of stimulus activate distinct social engagement or disengagement roles, or basically different regions of neural wiring, and cause an adjustment unconsciously in the way that the sense of self is understanding its own being, and the way that life is being automatically processed, or the way that neural activations are creating uniquely individualized experiences for parts of consciousness. And this happens beyond all awareness and control, and it has to do with the way vibrational signals or stimulus are activating the neural wiring unconsciously because of unique order within the neural wiring of social engagement and disengagement roles. These unique styles of neural activity can disrupt the processing of stimulus, and at individual moments there may be access to a limited sense of self, like you have access to this part of who you are, but you don't really know about all these other parts, and or stimulus might not be effectively processed. And this can generate a variety of health challenges, like what happens when you can't accurately sense something that's touching your skin? Let's say, for example, you're taking a hot dish out of the oven and your skin accidentally grazes the side of the pan. When the mind and the body are completely connected, the response time will occur instantaneously. And within a nanosecond, there are signals happening where the skin feels the heat and the burn and the pain of that, and that's being processed and translated, and instantaneously the hand moves away from it, okay? With that profound mind-body connectivity and effective flows within all of this miraculous activity, there's an instinctive nanosecond response time, okay? But if that's not happening, then there won't be that response time. The hand might stay where it's making contact with this really hot pan, and without that instinctive response time, there may be a very severe burn that happens because the skin wasn't like, oh my goodness, I'm being burned right now. Help, I'm in distress. Oh, okay, let me help you. Let's move that away. That information wasn't unconsciously flowing, and so the skin's just there and the mind doesn't know about it. So there's no response time, and there may be a very severe burn instead of just gently grazing the pan, just as one of infinite examples. There's a bunch of different stuff that can come up when sensory data is not being effectively processed and translated into personal experience. Personal experience can then kind of happen in bits and pieces in relation to your sense of internal identity and or external reality. I explore more about potential health challenges arising from unique order of neural wiring within the social engagement system in thesis statement number 10. So please stay tuned for that. Along with physical health challenges, there may be an infinite myriad of other implicit battles or mental, emotional, action patterned, behavioral, or relational challenges that arise from this unique order of neural wiring within the neurobiological social engagement system. For example, if automated translations of reality are exclusively stemming from the neurobiological social engagement role of emotional intimacy, then having emotional connections with other people is going to be the top priority according to how neural wiring is translating life, including identity and experience. And there won't be this ability, this unconscious ability to take into consideration other elements of personal needs or experience. And so the top priority in that instance is having emotional intimacy with other people. But that might jeopardize other elements of personal needs or boundaries or health. Like you might seek emotional intimacy with other people at the cost of certain regions of health or personal boundaries because of how neural wiring is translating life as these roles engage independently of one another. Another example is what happens when the physical intimacy role within the neurobiological social engagement system engages independently of other regions. Then you might get hypersexualized tendencies because of how neural wiring is automatically translating and processing life experience. And so if there's physical intimacy role within this neurobiological social engagement system, and maybe it's, for example, protecting the self from past sexual trauma, then when that region of data is activating and contributing to automated interpretations of reality, there will be unconscious hypersexualized tendencies. But the conscious self, who's observing different thoughts and feelings and action patterns and desires and sensations and whatever's coming up, isn't going to have access to understanding where that information's coming from. There won't be an innate ability to understand that these roles within the neurobiological social engagement system are operating independently of one another, and because of how the priority within this one role is engaging in affiliation with this neural wiring, that's creating different types of automated sensations and interpretations of reality, from thoughts and feelings and perceptions and desires to automated regulatory protocols within the brain and the body. Like the body itself might have hypersexualized tendencies, even distinctive automated thoughts, and it comes from this unique order of neural wiring that's coping with unconscious traumatic stress lodged in the body. If the role of physical health is engaging independently of emotional health or rest and restitution, especially when it's closely linked with a fight or flight stress response, then there may be excessive exercise without an ability to eat really well and take time for rest and relaxation. And those automated styles of personal experience, thoughts, feelings, action patterns, regulatory protocols, all the different stuff contributing to personal experience, it's stemming from that role, or these roles, if it's linked with a stress response, engaging independently of these other roles. And so you got these roles of rest and restitution and emotional well-being, and they take into consideration your happiness and your ability to feel relaxed and stuff. But those priorities are not being neurobiologically engaged, or they're not unconsciously accessible. And instead, the priority is to exercise and keep moving because you're in a state of stress. And then that information is providing automated interpretations of reality unconsciously, and it's not able to link up with these other potential priorities or these other regions of neural wiring. And so this can create all kinds of different implicit battles where it's affecting relationships with self, relationships with other people, your mental health, your emotional health, the health of your action patterns or decision-making tendencies and abilities or behavior. It can affect all these different regions of implicit health very unconsciously. What's able to be noticed through the conscious awareness is a minuscule fraction of what's actually occurring within the unconscious body-mind. And tapping into these insights can provide invaluable healing journey insights to ignite profound personal power reclamation. I've created a healing journey guide for identifying states of consciousness within unique order of neural wiring within the social engagement system. It really helps. So feel free to check out more about that in the video description below. In summary, my 7th thesis statement is that adverse childhood experiences or early life traumatic stress can cause roles within the neurobiological social engagement system to develop, exist, operate, and continue expanding independently of one another, creating alternate inner realities for various parts of self-essence. Various regions of neural wiring are then not able to effectively connect, communicate, and collaborate, profoundly impacting memory data carrying autobiographical information, emotions and unconscious sensations, action patterns, innate movement programs, approach avoidance tendencies, survival responses, integrative patterns, and regulatory protocols. And each role within the neurobiological social engagement system carries different priorities, and depending on how vibrational signals are activating neural wiring within the neurobiological social engagement system, then information providing navigation and regulation is going to shift and unconsciously adjust itself, affecting personal experience from behind the scenes of consciousness. My eighth discovery or thesis statement from this case study is that dissociative age regression occurs when neural wiring affiliated with parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child becomes independently activated. So basically, adverse childhood experiences or traumatic stress during early life disrupt attachment development, provoking divergent neurodevelopment with unique order of the neurobiological social engagement system. The social engagement role affiliated with parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child does not achieve neural connectivity with other social engagement roles. And so the neural wiring from those experiences during early childhood continue existing and operating independently of more recent neural data. The neural wiring involves implicit memories, so various sensations and action patterns, and it involves distinct styles of brain-body engagement. When this region of neural wiring is activated, then the social engagement role independently creates unique experiences of consciousness, and they may involve having a sense of self that feels like life did as a child, because the sense of self comes from projections from neural wiring as consciousness experiences the brain-body system. And so the sense of self then unconsciously feels like the sense of self from an early stage of neurodevelopment. And in addition, the way that the brain and the body are naturally regulating and operating mimic that of an early stage of neurodevelopment. And this might involve increased activity in the right brain hemisphere and decreased activity in the left brain hemisphere. It might involve chronic disengagement of the prefrontal cortex. It might involve dysfunction of cranial nerves or reduced vestibular and proprioceptive abilities. It might involve all these different unique styles of neurobiological activity as the social engagement role of the child in that parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child. That social engagement role is activated, engaging distinct regions of neural wiring, projecting interpretations of self and reality, and how that is engaging various styles of brain-body activity and manners of regulation. Because the neuroscience of dissociative age regression is a very misunderstood topic around the world, I'd like to explore this just a little bit more in depth. So two things happen when dissociative age regression activates. The role within the neurobiological social engagement system of parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child activates as vibrational signals are processed through this complex neural wiring. That role activates. The first thing that happens is neural wiring from a stage of early childhood engages, affecting navigation within the unconscious body-mind. The second thing that happens is brain-body activity shifts its style of operation to an early stage of neurodevelopment, adjusting regulation within the unconscious body-mind, so navigation, regulation. So I want to look at these things in particular and how this neurobiological activity impacts personal experience. Understanding this opens so many doors for healing. It's important that we understand what's actually happening in these structures so that people who are experiencing these miraculously unique occurrences can have compassionate understanding for what they're going through. And so healing practitioners can have deeper insight into the science of what their clients are experiencing so they know how to be there for them more effectively. We really can't provide healing empowerment of any kind, whether it's compassionate validation or potential hope for improving any associated health challenges. We can't embrace those potentialities until we understand the neuroscientific causalities behind these unique experiences. So let's explore this. Navigation within the unconscious body-mind affects identity and personal experience. So the first element of this is how the self relates with the self. Okay, so there's a few different elements of identity. It's how the self relates with the self, how the self relates with other people, how the self relates with elements of life experience. There's a lot of different components to this aspect of personal identity, and it all comes from how neural wiring is engaging. Okay, so the first thing is how the self relates with the self. And this includes internal conceptualizations like your skill sets, for example. An adult might have complete confidence in their skills and abilities. But when you're a child, those skill sets haven't developed yet. And so your confidence in your own abilities is much less than it would be when you're an adult. This is one of infinite examples. So personal confidence is affected during age regression. This how the self relates with the internal conceptualizations with the self is impacted during dissociative age regression. The second thing is how the self relates with the physical self. Okay, if the conceptualizations of the self are coming from neural networks developed during early childhood, then how the self is innately understanding the body is going to be different. And there may be challenges with that. Because if the neural networks are attempting to navigate the body of a 5-year-old, but the body is actually 25 years old, then there's going to be all kinds of misfires within the neural activity that impacts experiences of consciousness. So when we move through life and we're trying to have compassion for these unique experiences, we need to look at where our experience is coming from. Like when we're moving through life, everything's so automatic that we dismiss the miracles that are occurring. But the fact that we can navigate our sense of identity and our physical body and our conceptualization about who we are at all is a miracle. And so in these dissociative age regressive experiences, how the self is navigating the self is dependent on neural activity stemming from stages of early childhood. Because attachment development was disrupted and these regions of neural data didn't continue expanding with all this other new updated information. So there's parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child within the neurobiological social engagement system, and these regions of neural wiring are existing, operating, continuing to expand independently of other regions. And this is where the sense of self is coming from. So how the self relates with the internal conceptualizations of the self, how the self relates with the external conceptualization of the physical body is going to be different and unique during these dissociative age regressive experiences. Okay, the next part about this is how the self relates with the outer world, including other people. So when you move through life, if you're a grown adult and you're at a grocery store, let's say, for example, and you're walking past other people, how do you understand who you are in relation to them? Okay, think about that for a minute. When you're walking through the grocery store, how do you understand who you are in relation to other people? Okay? Really pause and think about that for a moment, because this isn't something that we naturally tend to explore. When you're walking through the store, your unconscious body-mind is doing a million things to let you know who you are in relation to each person. And if that stuff is disrupted, then you might find yourself at the grocery store going up to every person like, "Hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in forever." To every stranger. If your neural networks are providing disrupted navigation where every human being looks familiar to you, then you might walk up to every stranger in a grocery store and greet them like they're your best friend. And they're going to look at you like you're nuts because they've never met you before. Just as one example of how neural networks impact personal experience. Okay, so when you're moving through the grocery store, you understand these are strangers, but they're safe to be around. I've never seen them before, but they mean me no harm. And when you're a grown adult, you're walking through a store and you see a child, you understand that you're an adult and that's a child. All of that information is being unconsciously provided by neural networks operating in the unconscious body-mind. During an age-regressive experience of consciousness, you might be at the grocery store and adults seem very domineering, very superior. You might feel very small in relation to the people that are around you because the unconscious body-mind is not providing navigation that explains that you are equal to these people. You're an adult just like these other adults. And so adults might have this sense of, they might seem a little bit more intimidating, just as one of many examples. And then the other little part about this is if you're in an age-regressive experience of consciousness and your neural networks are providing information that say, hey, you're 5 years old, then when you see a child who's 5 years old, you're going to look at them and think that they are a peer. There won't be an instinctive ability to feel like a peer to adults, even though the body is an adult. Instead, you'll look at children and feel like those are your peers, due to how neural networks are navigating a sense of identity unconsciously. So how the self relates with the outer world and who feels like a peer is one example. Whether children or adults feel like they are your equal, those types of details are going to be impacted during dissociative age-regressive experiences of consciousness due to how neural networks are unconsciously navigating a sense of identity. Dissociative age regression will also affect how the self relates with other elements of personal experience, such as responsibilities. An adult has a lot more responsibilities than a child does, and the ability to connect with that and show up for that and know how to move through that stems from neural wiring. So when that neural wiring is not accessible, then it may feel very overwhelming or daunting to attempt to move through adulthood activities because the neural data that provides those abilities, that knowledge, that insight, those instinctive understandings allowing for navigation through those experiences is not accessible. While an adult might move through and be able to, pay the bills or go get the oil changed in the car, just kind of basic adulthood activities, during an age-regressive experience of consciousness, those types of tasks are going to feel very overwhelming or daunting or impossible or anxiety-provoking because neural networks providing that information unconsciously are not accessible. It has to do with brain-body activity, 1000%. It has to do with how these miraculous neural structures are contributing to automated styles of personal experience from behind the scenes. And this is so important to understand. We have to look at the neuroscience of it. We are at a point where mental health care has the opportunity to evolve and understand the neuroscience of every type of unique experience, including trauma-related age regression or dissociative age regression or chronic age regression, and understand the underlying causalities contributing to these unique experiences so we can provide effective validation and healing empowerment. Looking at what's happening on the outside isn't going to provide either of those. We have to look at what the brain and the body are up to unconsciously so we can address these unique experiences effectively because they are miraculous. Age regression is a profound miracle, and the more we can understand it, the more we can uplift dissociative age regressive experiences into healing empowerment in any and all types of ways. So the first thing that happens with dissociative age regression is it affects the unconscious navigation provided within the unconscious body-mind. This affects how the self relates with the inner self and the outer self. how the self relates with other people and other elements of personal experience. And the third thing that this navigation affects are interactions with experience. This is basically how identity, or the self relating with the self and other people in the world, impacts unfolding moments. How a 5-year-old engages with a moment of opportunity is going to be very different from how a 25-year-old engages with a moment of opportunity. How a 10-year-old engages in a brand new moment is going to be different than how a 40-year-old engages in a moment. And it has to do with the way neural wiring is contributing to personal experiences of consciousness. So how identity engages with personal life due to how the self relates with the inner and outer self, how the self relates with other people in the world, and how that information is unconsciously contributing to how the self is interacting with unique moments of personal experience. All of that is going to stem from neural wiring developed during early childhood, regardless of how old the body is. The body could be 7D years old, and during a dissociative age regressive experience, moments of unfolding reality will stem from stages of early childhood. It doesn't matter how old the body is, it doesn't matter how old the self appears to be. It has to do with the unique styles of neural activity. So if you're age regressing to 5 years old, then no matter how old the body is, the styles of personal experience are going to stem from neural wiring developed around age 5. Along with affecting navigation, age regression affects regulation. To understand this, we can actually look at the pyramid of learning and see how young stages of early neurodevelopment impact different styles of brain-body activity. So in the pyramid of learning, we've got the central nervous system at the baseline, and then it moves up and explores sensory systems: olfactory, visual, auditory, gustatory, tactile, vestibular, and proprioception. Then it moves up to sensory motor development and explores body scheme, reflex maturity, ability to screen input, postural security, awareness of two sides of the body, and motor planning. And then it moves up and explores perceptual motor development and talks about auditory language skills, visual spatial perception, attention center functions, hand-eye coordination, ocular motor control, and postular adjustment. And then moves up and explores cognitive intellect, daily living activities, behavior, and academic learning. During experiences of dissociative age regression, all of these elements are neurobiologically impacted. During experiences of dissociative age regression, 100% of these details in the pyramid of learning are neurobiologically impacted and unconsciously affected. So the ability to be aware of both sides of the body at the same time is impacted due to how the brain and body are unconsciously engaging and contributing to automated styles of personal experience. Depending on how young a state of consciousness is age regressing to, the effects of this might be a little more intense and severe. If you're age regressing to 2 years old, there's going to be much more of an effect on these elements of neurobiological activity than if you're age regressing to 15 years old. Ranges along a spectrum, but these elements within the pyramid of learning are all neurobiologically impacted during experiences of dissociative age regression. It's extraordinarily paramount that we look at the neuroscience of these experiences to understand what's actually happening to create them and how we can use this information to more effectively navigate loving empowerment for these unique and miraculous experiences. The most fascinating aspect about this is how the physical body might understand itself from the perspective of a child. So for example, as an adult who's like about 5'6", I understand my self-orientation from the eye level of someone who's 5'6". But a child relates with the world from the height of their body. And so a child might understand the world from a 3-foot tall perspective. When this unique neural wiring engages, it's interpreting reality. And oftentimes, it might interpret reality from the memories of being physically small. And so as the eyes acquire abstract information, translate it into personal experience, and provide a visual sensation for the mind or the self to observe, the surrounding reality might be from the perspective of being 3 feet tall instead of 5'6". Even though it's all happening in the same grown adult body, it has to do with the way neural activity is translating sensations of self in relation to reality. For example, when you go to reach a doorknob, it's somewhat below you, right? Like you're tall, you're up here, your eyes are up here, you kind of have to look down. And there's this relationship between your sense of self through visual eyesight and the external reality where you're reaching for a doorknob. And you understand that it's a couple feet below you and it's maybe near your waist while your eyes are up here. In an experience of dissociative age regression, the doorknob might feel like it's at eye level rather than waist level. So it's very, very miraculous and fascinating how the interpretations of reality completely come from the activity of neural data unconsciously. And when neural wiring from an early stage of neurodevelopment is independently operating, it can project interpretations of self and reality through that specific perspective of implicit data. During my case study work, I identified 3 specific types of age regression. Cognitive age regression affects the conscious mind, where there's perceptions and thoughts and feelings. Subsational age regression affects the unconscious mind, where there's more subtle backdrop sensations or emotions or implicit memory activations or activation of attachment well-being. Physical age regression affects the way the brain and the body are engaging. And so if there's difficulties walking or speaking, for example, that may be a sign of physical age regression. And then with these 3 types of age regression, there may be partial age regression, where 1 or 2 of these are being activated. You might feel age regression inside the unconscious and conscious mind, but the body is still able to be like, I'm an adult. Or the body might be experiencing difficulties reading or walking, but the inner reality of the conscious and unconscious minds is able to access more recent neural wiring and data from adulthood. Or there could be complete age regression, where all 3 of these types of age regression are simultaneously occurring. And then all the activity, conscious and unconscious, body and mind, are experiencing life through an age regressive state. Each of these types of age regression ranges along a spectrum from newborn and infancy to stages of early adulthood. You can find out more about these concepts in my book, Liberated Consciousness. My 9th thesis statement is that healing dissociative age regression, or age regression experienced in unique order of neural wiring, requires the gradual process of completing stages of early neurodevelopment. Just as children are beautiful, perfect, divine, precious miracles, child states of consciousness are absolutely beautiful and precious and perfect in every way. The same way that we don't try to rush children to grow up, we should never rush child states of consciousness to grow up. We are always allowed to create space for kiddos to be kiddos, whether that's a child in a child's body or a child in an adult's body. It's the exact same styles of neural wiring requiring the same level of love and care and gradual neurodevelopment. The healing intention in this process is to help child states of consciousness expand their abilities to experience a greater fullness of who they really are and experience more wonders of the world around them. By compassionately creating space for child states of consciousness to be exactly who they are and lovingly encouraging gradual neurodevelopment, we can nurture them into their full potential. The pyramid of learning is an excellent resource for this process of healing chronic age regression. Regularly engaging in activities that specifically address these different needs within the pyramid of learning, starting from the baseline of the central nervous system and gradually working up into all these different unconscious abilities, can really help provide healing relief and loving empowerment for these aspects of miraculous self-essence. When creating healing modalities for age regression, you can look at different styles of brain-body therapies or activities that directly address these elements within the pyramid of learning. For example, if you focus on activities that specifically address awareness of two sides of the body, or specifically brain-body activities that specifically address visual spatial perception, or activities that very specifically address hand-eye coordination. When you use activities that are specifically directed towards these distinct elements and you encourage regular engagement with these activities during dissociative age regressive experiences of consciousness, then you're effectively healing the underlying neurobiological core causalities of the experiences. And tackling healing from this angle is going to produce far greater healing benefits than any traditional therapeutic endeavor. For example, physical therapy exercises that are designed to increase connectivity between brain hemispheres is one of the most important healing endeavors that can ever be embarked upon to help transform and empower age regressive experiences. Then these age regressive states of consciousness are going to have greater brain-body access so they can thrive more. Because that's the goal. We want to help these states of consciousness thrive. It's the miracles that they are. And helping increase brain hemispheric balance and activity is one of many ways to empower these states of consciousness. Age regression affects 100% of brain-body activity, including parietal engagement, temporal lobe engagement, how the brainstem is operating and connecting mind-body activity, how nervous systems are regulating. It affects body awareness and how the body knows how to walk and move within orientation and time and space. It affects 100% of brain-body activity, and it's really important to look at the neuroscience to understand and provide healing empowerment for these unique experiences. An extraordinarily important, paramount aspect of healing chronic age regression is uncoupling traumatic stress responses from dissociative age regressive states. The age regression is not the same thing as a trauma response. While this unique neurodevelopment may have been activated from a traumatic stress response, the age regressive state is completely different, separate, and distinct from traumatic stress responses. And this is really important because working with age regression is very different from working with a traumatic stress response. They're two completely different elements of neurobiological wiring, separate components of the experience requiring completely different styles of responses and interactions to ignite internal healing. Once these two elements of experience are distinguished from each other and the traumatic stress response starts to be diminished through certain styles of healing, then the age regressive state of consciousness or child part of consciousness can freely explore their neurodevelopment as a trauma-free child. And this is where the neurodevelopment can have an opportunity to continue expanding and healing, so these age regressive states can grow into the fullness of their true potential. But that can't effectively happen as long as this region of neural wiring is being impacted by these stress responses. So uncoupling them and helping heal the stress response, or at least decrease it, can help free this element of neurobiological wiring, and then these parts of consciousness can freely explore themselves in life and continue healing and growing at a very natural pace in their own natural way. But it's important to understand the distinction between age regression and trauma responses, because they are not the same thing, and associating them with each other or mistaking them for one another can create some severe harm along the healing journey. So it's very important to understand what these actually are and how they're different and how they can interplay with one another, because they can both be activated at the same time. There might be activation of age regression and activation of a trauma response, but it's important to distinguish them. The trauma response is coming from nervous system regulation affiliated with implicit neural wiring from past moments of unfulfilled attachment needs. Age regression is certain styles of brain-body activity, including amplified right brain engagement, affiliated with neural wiring gathered during early childhood. They're very different things, and they contribute to experience in different ways. So uncoupling them and helping decrease the stress response so the age regressive state of consciousness can freely explore their neurodevelopment as a trauma-free child is very important along this healing journey. The absolute most important element of healing chronic age regression is to finish repairing the disrupted attachment development. This affects neural wiring carrying all types of memories and neural wiring carrying all types of integrative patterns and regulatory protocols. So you really kind of get to the baseline of all the different brain body stuff when you work directly with attachment systems. What I'm about to share with you can actually be applied during any type of healing journey that focuses on inner child liberation or attachment healing. So what I'm about to share with you isn't just for liberating age regressive states of consciousness into the great expanse of all that they can truly be. It can really focus on that, but really what I'm about to share with you can be applied to help heal internal attachments and heal the inner child, because we all have an inner child. Every human being on the planet has the neurobiological applications of consciousness of an inner child. And that's kind of a complex topic of its own, so I won't dive into it right here. But what I'm about to share with you can be applied to heal attachment systems and liberate any kind of inner child, not just age regressive states of consciousness. So at the core of the neurobiological social engagement system, that very first role to start developing that impacts how all the other roles develop is parent-child bonding, especially from the perspective of the child. And then all these other different roles kind of develop on top of that or after that. And so the implicit neural wiring of parent-child bonding right here at the foundation of the neurobiological social engagement system associated with attachment development that affects how experiential elements are processed into memories and create different types of regulatory protocols and integrated patterns of the brain-body system. That's kind of like the root baseline of all this. So when you get down to that core and work directly with the attachment development affiliated with that role, you really cut to the neurobiological core and the foundation of where these experiences are coming from. And you can create some profoundly empowering healing, like profoundly empowering healing. You're not just like, oh, I gotta like change this unique thing about me. No. You're not trying to change anything about who you are. You're already perfect. Like, let's just cut to the chase here. You're a perfect human being.
You're beautiful and amazing and miraculous and incredible exactly as you are. Healing is not about changing who you are. You never need to change anything about yourself. Healing is just about becoming more of who you truly are. That's what the healing journey is about. So when we get down to the core of healing chronic age regression, the goal is to repair the disrupted attachment development so that all parts of self-essence can be free to be themselves. That's really the goal here. That's really the goal here. So all parts of the self-essence, all aspects of consciousness flowing through the brain-body system can be liberated into the fullness of all they truly are. So it comes down to attachment development, okay? So getting down to the core of healing this and igniting this profound empowerment, the best way, the most important aspect is to heal the disrupted attachment development. And the goal of this here is to have the present day adult self connect with the inner child and reestablish parent-child bonding within the self. Present day adult self connects with the childhood self, or the inner child, or child parts of consciousness, or however you'd like to describe it. And they play this role of extending love and receiving love. It's all happening in the same being, okay? But it's two distinct roles that are going on. Parent-child bonding from the perspective of the caregiver, where the adult self is extending love inward. And then parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child, where love is being received from the adult self by these child parts of consciousness. But it's all happening in the same brain-body system, but between different aspects of consciousness who are experiencing different regions of neural wiring. Okay? It's repairing attachment development by the adult self, connecting with the inner child or child states of consciousness or age-regressive parts of consciousness, or however you want to describe it, extending love and receiving love. And it's all about subconscious language, which is not the same as conscious language. This is conscious language. Right here, this is conscious language. Words with a meaning and conveying things and using my body in kind of a casual manner. This is explicit conscious language. Subconscious language has to do with how the unconscious body-mind communicates. And so, for example, when you shift the way that the eyes are moving and engaging, when you shift the way the eyebrows are moving and engaging, when you shift the way the body is engaging and you lean in because you want to be closer, when you take time to emotionally connect, when you take time to shift the way that the voice is creating vibrations to be more calming and more soothing and more compassionate and more playful and more gentle and more loving and more endearing. That's an example of subconscious language. That's an example of the type of communication that really directly impacts attachment well-being. And so taking time to connect through that style of energetic engagement from the adult self to the child self is how things start to shift very profoundly. So for example, you might do a mirror meditation, okay? And you're looking in the mirror. Pull this as an example, okay? All right, so looking in a mirror. And if I'm just like, hey, what's up? How are you? You cool? Okay, that's good. Bye. There's no connection happening there. There's no connection happening in that moment. There's nothing going on. But if instead I'm like, hey, you. And in this moment, I'm looking directly into the colored portion of my eyes. Okay, it's not just like, oh man, I'm noticing that zit on my face. It's so hideous. Why is it there? I should probably pop and get rid of this really ugly thing on my face. You know, it has to be very specific. You're focusing on connecting with your inner experiencer, not your body. Your body's just a tool. You're connecting with your inner experiencer in this moment. So you want to look at the colored part of your eyes and connect with the consciousness inside of you and flowing through your body. And so, hey, you. How's it going in there? Is everything going okay? I just wanted to take a little moment and check in because you matter. And you matter deeply. During a mirror meditation, for example, you can really take time to connect. And there's a few different things that happen, but the goal is to use subconscious language to help fulfill attachment needs. Using subconscious language, using different styles of bodily features, facial expressions, and vocal tones to specifically meet attachment needs. A felt sense of being seen, loved, treasured, appreciated, and celebrated. A felt sense of safety, security, protection, and provision. A felt sense of support, connection, vulnerable closeness, and collaborative community. A felt sense of respect, recognition, embrace, allowance, and opportunistic space and directional guidance. The goal is to meet specific attachment needs through application of subconscious language while connecting from the present day adult self to the inner child, or child parts of consciousness, or age regressive states of consciousness. This is the core of healing that disrupted attachment development that resides at the baseline of any type of chronic age regression. It could be an independent state of consciousness where a child fully manifests in physical form, or it could be something a little less intensive than that. It could be a child part of consciousness who is not their own separate person, but they're a separate aspect of self-essence. They don't experience the body entirely independently from the adult self, but they're still their own distinct energetic essence to some degree. It really ranges along a spectrum within unique order of neural wiring of the social engagement system. But with any type of age regression, anywhere along this spectrum, the core is healing disrupted attachment development. It's all about meeting these specific attachment needs through application of subconscious language as the adult self connects with child parts of consciousness. With that intention clearly established, there's an infinite myriad of ways that this can unfold. Mirror meditation is just one of them. But with that application, one of the most effective, playful things that I found along this healing journey was something that I called the peekaboo meditation. And what you do is you play peekaboo in a mirror. It works directly with object impermanence, self-recognition, and other elements of neurobiological age regression. So with child states of consciousness, there's this object impermanence thing. Okay, so when there's a young baby, an infant, or a toddler, object impermanence means that when something's not directly in front of them, they do not know that it exists at all. Because the neural wiring providing that information hasn't been sculpted yet. And so object impermanence can be activated during age regressive states of consciousness. And during those moments, if something's not directly within the immediate reality, neural wiring cannot express to that part of consciousness that that thing exists. So as soon as something's no longer in front of you, you don't know that it has a potential to exist at all. So for example, if you have a friend and you're hanging out with a friend and then the friend leaves, the body might experience severe anxiety because there isn't an understanding that that person still exists, even though they're not there right now. Neural wiring can't give you that information. Another example is if you have like a stuffed animal or something. The reason a baby's going to cry if you don't give them their stuffed animal is because they think it doesn't exist anymore, and that's scary to them. It's just one of potential examples. But one of the potential examples of what could happen is if a child is crying because they want their stuffed animal, it's because their unconscious body mind is terrified that that thing doesn't exist anymore. And there is an emotional connection with it, and that attachment is now just in jeopardy. And it's very physically terrifying to the unconscious body mind. Object impermanence is a profound element of experiencing chronic age regression. So, when an age regressive state of consciousness is engaging, if something isn't right in the immediacy of reality, there's not an instinctive ability to understand that that thing exists. And that can feel very terrifying. This comes into play in a super uniquely miraculous way, because what happens when there's object impermanence with your own sense of self and your own physical body? What happens when object impermanence affects your sense of identity and your own physical existence? Then the moment that you're not seeing yourself, you don't know that you actually exist. Based on how neural wiring is providing automated interpretations of reality. It's completely unconscious. It's not like parts of self-essence are up here like, oh my God, I don't exist clearly. No. It's because of how neural wiring is navigating self and life based on how this neural data has developed. And so if there's all of this dissociation, then there's all this undercoupled memory data because of moments of unfulfilled attachment needs. And that undercoupled data is what's navigating identity and experience. And there's not enough connections to affiliate all these different elements of self and life. So the moment that you stop looking at yourself, you suddenly don't know that you actually exist, because the neural wiring attempting to provide that information doesn't have enough connections to tell you that information unconsciously. So object impermanence can affect your sense of identity and the conceptualization of your inner self with the outer reality of your physical body. Creates very, very indescribably unique and dissociative experiences. So this is one of many things that can happen during dissociative age regression, is object impermanence then affects your sense of self, your own connection with your being. Because what's happening is neural wiring navigating your sense of identity, which is your internal conceptualization of yourself and your external conceptualization of yourself. So different thoughts and feelings and sensations about who you think you are, and then how that connects with the physical body of how your identity navigates the outer world. Okay, all the information creating your sense of identity is then coming from neural wiring from early childhood. So even if your body is in your mid-20s, how the sense of identity is being automatically experienced might be coming from age 5. And then automated interpretations of reality think that your body is 5 years old. And then it can be very awkward to try to navigate a body that's 25 and not 5. But the neural wiring creating these automated interpretations of reality thinks that you're 5 years old. And so when you look in a mirror and then you suddenly see that there's a 25-year-old body in front of you instead of a 5-year-old body in front of you, it challenges the neural wiring. And consistently challenging it with love can ignite transformation, so this can make new connections and start to heal. So the peekaboo meditation works directly with this neurobiological component of chronic dissociative age regression. You play it in a mirror and you pop out into different sides of the mirror and you play peekaboo. Now, coming out from different sides of the mirror is really important, because when you are here, okay, so let's say we've got a mirror that's here, okay? If I'm over here and I come from the right to the left to the mirror, that stimulates a different part of my brain than if I come from the left to the right of the mirror. So the side that you're coming in from and the way that the direction of stimulus is engaging neurobiological applications of consciousness shifts. And so when you come from one side to the mirror and you play peekaboo, and then you come from the other side of the mirror and you play peekaboo, you're connecting different regions of the brain. And when you keep activating different regions of the brain one after the other, then new connections are gradually being made. So, let's say, for example, I'm over here, and I go peekaboo, and then I'm over here, and I go peekaboo, and over here, and I go peekaboo, and then over here, and I go peekaboo. Chronically doing that is activating different regions of the brain, and when you continue activating different regions of the brain, then new connections are gradually formulating. And the peekaboo aspect is really important because you're engaging in a state of play, which helps connect with these child states of consciousness. You're kind of breaking through the barriers of any protector parts that may be creating blockages between the adult self and the inner child, which is just a chronic occurrence in this unique order of neurowiring. There's all these different parts of self-essence designed to support the self. And with this unique order of neurowiring, the best way to support the self is to keep the inner child and the adult separate, because the adult self needs to engage in the present day while the inner child is connected with this disrupted attachment development. And they can't coexist, because if disrupted attachment development is impacting everyday life, then it's going to be hard to function as an adult. And so all these different neurobiological applications of consciousness designed to support self-essence, and they do that by creating blockages between the adult self and the inner child, because that seems like the best way to navigate life, according to neurowiring. Consciousness is not choosing that. Self-essence is not choosing that. Parts of consciousness are experiencing automated projections from neurowiring. The neurobiological wiring believes that that's the best way to navigate life unconsciously. So it's not the self, and it's not conscious. It's neurowiring, and it's unconscious. And so engaging in a state of play helps break through some of those neurobiological blockages to create healing where it might otherwise kind of be hindered unconsciously. So when you engage in this state of playfulness, you're really connecting with these aspects of self to create the healing that's really needed. Okay, so peekaboo is a nice way to engage child states of consciousness in a safe and healing manner. The other important element of this is that you're playing peekaboo in a mirror, because when you're suddenly popping out and you're seeing yourself, and then you're popping out, you're not seeing yourself, popping back in and you see yourself again, then the way that the object impermanence is working within this neural wiring is that it's creating new associations with the sense of self who is physically existing in relation with this neural wiring that's contributing to the chronic age regression. So there's this neural wiring contributing to chronic age regression. It's neural wiring from many, many years ago, from different stages of early neurodevelopment. And then you have who you are today as a physical adult. And when you activate this neural wiring and create new associations with the physical body that exists now, you're creating new neural connections that can help relieve some of the anxiety caused by these unique dissociative experiences, because you're engaging the power of consciousness to directly work with the underlying neurobiological causalities, creating these unique experiences. And then all aspects of consciousness can start to experience greater connection, while the brain-body system starts to heal so that it can energetically flow and operate much more effectively. So peekaboo mirror meditations really work with the neurobiological structures of age regression and parts of consciousness to unite the adult self and the inner child while healing the brain-body aspects that are contributing to unique experiences that may provoke some health challenges like chronic anxiety or difficulties functioning in everyday life. And again, the goal here is to work directly with attachment development, applying subconscious language to work with specific attachment needs. So when you keep that in mind with the peekaboo mirror meditation, you are doing so many miracles in the healing journey. And once you get that down, you do it every day. And if you do a peekaboo mirror meditation 3 times a day, every day for a few months, you're going to do more healing good for these age regressive states of consciousness than any amount of therapy is ever going to do. Because talking about stuff does not heal the underlying causalities of these unique experiences. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. It's all about using the power of consciousness to work directly with the underlying neurobiological activity, which means understanding what's happening here during every unique experience, figuring out where the power of consciousness lies, and then applying that power to transform this, in summary. Another extraordinarily powerful practice that radically changed my life is something that I call implicit song rewrite. What you do is you take a melody from a song that was known a long time ago, and you use the melody and the rhythm of that with new words. And then you sing that to yourself from the adult self to the child self, repairing attachment development, applying subconscious language, different facial expressions, vocal tones, and body cues. But in this process, by taking a song that was known a long time ago, using the baseline of that song, you're activating neural wiring that's connecting with these child states of consciousness. So maybe you pick a song from preschool or from elementary school or from middle school, or some time period that this state of consciousness has specific neural access to. So if it's a state of consciousness that experiences life between ages 2 and 6, then you want to pick a song that was known during that time period of your life. If you're experiencing a state of consciousness between ages 10 and 15, then you want to pick a song that was known during that time period of your life. Once you pick a song, using the melody and the rhythm activates that whole region of neural wiring. So memories are all about abstract association. So once you activate that melody, then other associations gathered during that time period that have any kind of connection with that are going to simultaneously be activated. So you're working directly with the neural wiring affiliated with this dissociative age regressive state of consciousness. Then by adding new words, you're inserting your conscious power and the authority you have as a present day adult self. And in doing that, you're connecting these two worlds of separate neural wiring, and you're creating new connections to sculpt attachment well-being so that these aspects of self-essence can have more connection because of the opportunity to expand neural connectivity. So you pick a song that was known from a long time ago, you use the melody of it, but you change the words. And then here's where you can get really playful and lovingly creative. You can use words that address attachment needs. So maybe you take a song and you have the melody and the rhythm, or the way that you're using vocal vibrations basically, but then you let the words be something about how you're seen and loved and celebrated, or how you're safe and secure and everything's okay, or how you're supported and connected and you just want to be vulnerably close to your inner child. You pick an attachment need, you create words based on that, and you apply that with the rhythm and the melody of this song that was known a long time ago. And the adult self sings it to the inner child through a mirror meditation, or, holding the self and having some kind of physically intimate cuddle session the way a parent would with a child, because you're repairing this role within the neurobiological social engagement, the parent-child bonding, is what you're focusing on here as you work with attachment development through application of subconscious language. And using this, you're connecting these different regions of neural wiring in a way that addresses attachment needs. And it produces profound healing journey effects within the unconscious body-mind, because you're applying the power of consciousness, working directly with the neural wiring residing beneath these unique experiences. So let's just play with an example, okay? So Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Let's say that song was known when you were a little kid. The song goes, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. You take the melody of that, but you change the words. Inner child, I love you. Loving you, there's nothing I'd rather do. Up above you shine so bright. You're everything in my day and night. I love you, my inner child. I just want to see you smile. Just as one of infinite examples, the goal is to take a song that you knew a long time ago, use the melody and the rhythm with new words to address attachment needs, sing it from the adult self to the inner child to repair that attachment development. And then the adult self is giving love. The child self is receiving love. It's all happening in the same brain-body system, but with different aspects of self-essence. And this is the most powerful way to create healing from within. These thesis statement insights stem from intimate, expensive, personal experience. I experienced about a dozen age-regressive states of consciousness, ranging from 6 months old to 16 years old. And I gradually cultivated this program for myself that I called Raising Mosaics. And it was this process to repair attachment development from my adult self to different states of consciousness, experiencing unique styles of age regression. And through gradual application of dozens of different practices, I was able to help liberate my beautiful inner child into the fullness of all that she can be, so she can be her true self, because who we really are is not an aspect of self that experiences separation. And every part of us just wants connection. But the connection that we're really looking for comes from inside of us. Neural wiring might stimulate messages where we seek connection outside of us. But the truth is, our neural wiring and our consciousness just wants to have internal connection. Different aspects of us, whether it's an adult self or a child state of consciousness or any other unique aspect of self-essence experiencing a distinct region of neural wiring, they really just want to have loving presence within the self. At the end of the day, that's all consciousness and neural wiring desires, is loving presence. Different aspects of who we are just want to be connected from within. And when we focus on repairing disrupted attachment development, we can create that inner connection so that all parts of self-essence can be liberated into their true potential and experience a greater fullness of self and life than what was ever imagined possible before. Age-regressive states of consciousness, or child parts of consciousness fully manifested in physical form, are the most astounding, precious, angelic, miraculous components of the human experience existing on the entire planet. Infinite, astounding, inspiring miracles exist within age-regressive states of consciousness. These child parts of consciousness should absolutely be treasured and celebrated and respected and uplifted into the fullness of all they can be, treasured and savored and cherished for the magic that they are. It is beautiful to be a child, no matter if it's a child in an adult's body or a child in a child's body. the fact of existing as a child is beautiful and is unconditionally worthy of loving celebration. Age-regressive states of consciousness are an inspiring miracle that should be embraced unconditionally with love across the planet. While we embrace these age-regressive states of consciousness, we can help empower these parts of self-essence to be all that they can be by healing the underlying causalities of unique experiences, which involves the gradual process of completing early stages of neurodevelopment by healing attachment systems and associated regions of neural wiring carrying memory data, integrative patterns, and regulatory protocols. In conclusion, my 9th thesis statement is that healing chronic age regression requires the gradual process of completing early stages of neurodevelopment through loving presence.